Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Harshvardhan and I am the head of product here at GyanDhan. Welcome to the session wherein we'll be talking about F1 visa. And with us, we have Benjamin. Uh, we'll talk about GyanDhan first for a couple of minutes and then I will hand over the session to Benjamin. So let me run you through what GyanDhan does. So GyanDhan is, in brief, is a marketplace. When it comes to foreign education loan, we have 10 plus lending partners. We have helped more than 15,000 students to get education loans. We have done more than 5,000 crores of disbursement. And if you see our Google reviews, we have more than 1,000 students who have given us more than 4 stars in Google reviews. Uh, let's talk how GyanDhan can help you in your education loan journey. So with GyanDhan, you will be allotted a personal education loan counselor who will help you with end-to-end assistance in foreign education loan. And then we also help you to find the best loan, and we define best loan as the loan which can give you the highest loan amount at the lowest interest rate. Then we also help in loan disbursement pre-visa, and we have end-to-end digital process, and we have facilities for online documentation, and in few cases for doorstep document pickup. If you want to contact us, you can visit our site www.gyandhan.com, or you can email at us contact@gyandhan.com. We also have our Facebook and Insta handles. Now let's jump directly to the session ahead of us today. Let's hear from an ex-visa officer and he'll guide us how to ace the F1 visa interview. So for that, let's talk a little more about the guest today. So we have with us Benjamin Artaban, who is the Director of Consular Affairs at Argo Visa. He has a immense experience, and he was the former US diplomat and an immigration visa consultant. In the past, he has served as a vice consul in China and Colombia and has vast experience in the US visa process. So I'm sure with the depth of experience that he has, um, we'll surely learn uh, and proactively remove all the burdens or proactively remove all the blockages that can come in you and your F1 visa. Hi Benjamin, welcome to the session. Over to you.
Hi. It's good to be here. It's good to be speaking to GyanDhan again. I know we've had some talks in the past, and I think they've been really great talking to your audience. And I know that everyone's eager to get to the U.S. and get your visas, so you can continue on your education path. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be able to contribute to that. Hopefully today, and like Harsh already said, I was a former U.S. diplomat and visa officer for many years. But at Argo, I'm not the only one. There are many of us at Argo. Over 20 former visa officers have served over 35 different countries, speak over 14 different languages, and we've adjudicated over 1 million visas total during the course of all our careers. 1 million visas. And so I just want to put that in perspective, comparing that to other purported visa agents that are out there claiming to have some expertise. I personally have sat at 60,000 visa interviews at the window and then made the decision, right? So not only was I present at the interview, the result of the interview was up to me, right? And so I know exactly what was happening there. Other people that claim to be experts at this, maybe they've attended one visa interview and they were successful. Maybe they attended 4. Even if they attended 9 and were successful on the final time, that's paltry in comparison to the amount of expertise and experience that someone who's actually making the decisions has. So I would say make sure you're getting your information from a credible source, from the right expert. Don't rely on non-experts and people that are selling snake oil and magic potions. You need to get the real information that's going to help you get your visa. And is it possible for me to share my screen, Harsh?
Sure. Benjamin, I'll put my slides down. You can just go ahead and present your screen then.
Okay, I'm going to do that. All right. Okay. So, yeah, what I wanted to talk to you about is the student visa. And I'm just going to talk for a little while and then we'll get into some questions because I know that answering questions is really what you're interested in, so that we can help everybody. The information I'll give you today is going to be very general. It's going to apply to everyone, more or less, but to really know what you should do personally, what it's going to take for you to get your visa issued, it's going to take a personal analysis, but we'll go over the generals first because these general things will help everyone. Understanding the general context, what you need to have in mind, how you need to approach the visa interview. So one thing that I want everyone to see here is this. The refusal rate has been rising. I'm sure everyone has already seen this in terms of people that they're hearing from who've gone to the visa interview. Not only is it hard to get a visa appointment that's on time and able to get to your program, it's also harder to get the visa. The refusal rate from 2019 until 2022 has gone up 10 basis points, nearly a 50% increase. This is really startling to us. And there's been no change in policy. It really is just the culture inside the embassies and consulates. Because of a year and a half of downtime, they lost the confidence and the experience that was allowing them to, first of all, go faster, do more visas, provide more visa appointments, and second of all, issue visas confidently. Now they're refusing more because they're not as confident as they used to be. So make sure that you're not in that 35%. The first time around is your best shot. If you've already been refused before, you're going to need a new strategy to go in there so that you're not just refused again. Take this seriously because this is it's all on you. You're the person who's going to be able to influence their decision and not get refused. How does our platform work? International students come to us through GyanDhan. GyanDhan has a special link where you're going to be able to get a price from GyanDhan directly, and you'll be able to be matched up with a former visa officer that's going to be a specialist in your situation, in your type of visa, and if you have any special needs or special aspects to your application that need addressing. I already told you we've got officers from everywhere, and you're going to be able to benefit from their expertise, not just the expertise of one former visa officer, but the combined expertise of over 20 former visa officers that work together to help you get your visa issued. And I can't stress this one enough. Over 1 million visas adjudicated. We're the true experts. We're the first company to do this and the only company that's a team of visa officers that's actually helping students get their visas issued. So, like I said, a really short visa presentation. And then there's only one more thing that I want to share here right now, which, Harsh, did you plan to share the link that GyanDhan has for Argo Visa's services?
Yeah, I've already shared on the chat box with the students,
Okay,
and I'm going to
great.
publish it.
Awesome. Great. So you've got that link there, and that's how you're going to find out about more of our services. And make sure you use that link because that's the special GyanDhan link that's going to get you some special perks, and we'll know that you're coming through GyanDhan. And so we'll be able to give you special attention when you connect with us. Okay, so applying for visas. I'll give you my top tip. Then we'll start answering questions. My top tip for all students that are applying for their visas, and this is especially true for students in India, because the visa interviews are so fast. Sometimes students go in, they think, wait, did the interview even begin? And they've already been refused. Here's my top tip. You cannot be passive in the visa interview. In the visa interview, you have to be active. You have to be proactive. You have to know what information you want the visa officer to have, and you have to give it to them, because there's no guarantee the visa officer will ask you many questions. There's no guarantee the visa officer will ask you the questions that you want to be asked. There's no guarantee that the visa officer will look at any documents that you bring. In fact, it's most likely that the visa officer will not look at any of the documents that you bring in. So you have to know, like a salesperson, what are the important points? What are the sales points that you can tell that visa officer that are going to convince that visa officer that you are a good issuance of a visa and they don't need to spend any more time thinking about it. They can just issue that visa. What are those highlights? Well, they're going to change from person to person. It depends on your situation. Is it your academics? Is it your finances? Is it your plan for what you're going to do when you come back? Is it a previous career? Whatever it's going to be, that's what you need to focus on. Okay? So that's the part where it's in general, you know that you got to focus on that and you have to present that information. But the part that's personal is what's your highlight? What's the advantage you bring to the table? All right. So Harsh, how should we start answering questions?
So,
Do you want to
sure. I'll I'll
bring some
shoot
of them up?
questions. I'll direct the questions to you. So I'll go one by one. So I have a question from Ishika Gupta, and she asked that after booking my visa slot, I received an admit from another university. How should I change my service ID because I cannot update it on the portal?
That's no problem. This is just a technical question. When you go into the visa interview, there's 2 or 3 windows that you'll go up to. And before the final interview, which is with the American, you're going to speak to some local staff from your country. And when you go up to there, you should tell them, oh, I've changed my SEVIS number. Can you please update my SEVIS number? And you'll just give them the new I-20 with the new SEVIS number, and they'll update it. So that's no problem at all.
Cool. I have another question from Vidya Bhushan Reddy, and he asked that I have been to visa uh, to the USA on J1 in 2017. Now I applied for F1 hospitality management and I got refused in the month of June. And I'm applying again. Please, how to convince officer next time? So this is a very open-ended question that he has asked.
Well, I'm glad you're coming and you're looking for the right information. You're already on the right track. You know you know that you need a change, right? You're not just going to go in and then try the exact same thing and hope for a different result. Now, since you told me that you had a J1 visa in 2017 and now you're applying for an F1, what I'm thinking right off the bat is that you've got a gap in your timeline, right? That if you're doing a J visa that back then and it's 5 years and now you're going for an F1, that there might be a gap in your academic studies. If there's a gap in your studies where you're not just going directly from secondary school to undergrad to master's, you're going to need to explain it. The visa officers will consider you a non-traditional student. And when you're a non-traditional student, the visa officers always asking themselves the question, why? Why is this a good idea now, right? For a student going from bachelor's to master's, they're never asking why, because that's just a natural next step. But if you've been working for a few years, then the question is why? Why is this a good idea? And so you need to have a real, not vague plan, but a real concrete plan for what you're going to do with that new degree, right? Why is it a good idea to leave whatever job you're working at to go and pay for this degree if you're paying for it? What's the return on that investment, right? It's going to be expensive to study in the US. Are you going to make a lot more money coming back to a new job? Do you have a job that's guaranteed? Do you have a business plan? Whatever it is, you need to make sure that you're able to express why this makes sense for you, because that's what they're wondering. Even if they don't say it in those terms, they're wondering, why does this make sense for you to go back to school now, right? So that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah, Ben, just a follow up on that one and a little more specific. Javed asked that what would be the probable answer for 13 years of education gap?
Well, there's no probable answer. This is something that many students struggle with. They ask me questions that only they know the answer to. So you just asked, what's the answer for a 13-year education gap? I don't know. You are the only person that has lived those 13 years. You're the only person who knows the answer to that question. You have to give that answer, right? Now, in a consultation, I would ask you over and over again and get you to tell me what you've been doing, why it's a good idea, what's the change. But you're the person who has to pull that. You're the only person with that answer in their head about what it is that makes it make sense for you to be going back to school after 13 years.
Slightly different question, Ben. Vinay asked that can I defer my admission after my visa stamping? Will there be any issue at the port of entry?
There may be. Anytime you want to make a change like that at the port of entry, you may have an issue with your visa. So let's say that you've been admitted for the fall semester, and now you want to go to the spring semester. If you get a new I-20 with the same SEVIS number with a new program start date for the spring, and then you're entering, and on your visa it says this is the SEVIS number, this is the institution, and you haven't changed anything about it, it's the same institution, the same program, the same SEVIS number, then you most likely won't have a problem. But if you get issued to one university, if you get issued to, we'll say Syracuse University, and then you defer and you change to, Seattle Community College, and you enter the country and you're saying you're going to a completely different school than what's printed on your visa, and it's your first time entering, then you might have a problem, right?
Okay. Vinay has a follow-up question, and he's being a little more specific here. Can I defer my admission from fall to spring after my visa stamping? Will there be any issue at the port of entry? Is there any 6-month rule uh, that I have to enter USA within 5 or 6 months of the F1 visa stamping?
There's no 6-month rule. There's no hard rule on that. The only thing that you need to consider is, okay, is the information the same, right? Is the information on your new deferred I-20, and you do need a new one because the program start date will be for the fall. So if you're going in the spring, you need a new program start date because they will not let you enter if your program start date was in the past. You need that new program start date. And if the information is all the same, that official at the border will look at it and say, okay, well, all this matches. But there's the possibility, if you have a change, then they're going to look and say this doesn't match. What's the deal here? And they might think that something nefarious is going on. But if it's the same program, everything's done in good faith, then you won't have a problem.
Yep.
If now let me just we can answer this question too in case someone has this. If you're changing your program, if you are changing schools after being issued your visa, don't take a risk and try to just show up at the border and get past them. The visa officers are more accepting than the border patrol officers. So if you arrive at the border and you've got a different program, they're going to think that you're some type of criminal. They're going to put you in that room. They're going to question you. They're going to try to get you to admit to crimes. What you should do instead is schedule another visa interview, go in and tell them, you already gave me one visa to this university, but because of whatever the reasons are, and give concise but real reasons, I've changed my program, and so I'd like to get a new visa that has the correct university on it. Okay? They'll know that they already gave you the visa, and most of the officers will be able to put that together that, oh, he already had the visa. He could have just traveled to the US, but he came to get a new visa with the right new information. And it should just be very easy. Okay?
Thanks, Benjamin, for that. We have another question from Ramakrishnan, and he has said, could you talk about fully funded PhD student F1 visa acceptance rate? Any idea around that?
So the F1 visa acceptance rate around the world, like we said, right now it's about 65%. Now, for masters, it's going to be higher. Let's say for masters, it's 75%. Okay. Now, let's say for fully funded masters, it's going to be even higher. Let's say 85%. And it's probably even higher than that. It's probably 90, 95%. Anyone that fails to get their visa who has a fully funded master's, the main problem is going to be one of two things. One, that you've got something in your history that's bad. Maybe you committed some, you committed some misrepresentation on a previous visa interview, or you were in the U.S. before, and you quit your program, or there's some bad behavior that they've seen. Or two, if there's nothing like that, then it's probably that the visa officer doesn't know you have a fully funded program. If you don't walk up and you don't say, "Hello, I'm going to Michigan State University. I've got a fully funded master's degree in civil engineering," then they don't know. If you don't tell them, they do not know. It's like going into a job interview, except it's like going into a job interview where they're not going to look at your resume. They're only going to say, "Okay, tell me about yourself," and whatever you say, that's all they know about you.
Thanks for that, Benjamin. I have another question. And yes, that I have completed my undergraduate in 2019 and I started working. And since 2019, I am studying masters from distance university. Can I mention my masters or not? Because I am going for masters. So basically, he is doing distant learning program, which is masters, and now he is
Mhm.
also going for masters. Can he mention that or not?
Yes, sure. Now, that's something where I'd have to get more information. Have you completed it? Was it was it just one class per semester? Were you really making a lot of progress? What school was it? Was it an online school in the US? Is it a school with a good reputation or not? Is that more impressive, or is the work that you've been doing since 2019 that's more impressive? We need to analyze what's the actual thing to focus on, because it's not just, oh, should this be told? You're not going to be able to tell everything in the interview. You're only going to be able to focus on a few things. And things that aren't going to help you get your visa, you don't want to focus on,
Yep.
because that's just wasting time. It's taking time away from focusing on the things that will get your visa issued.
Yep. Benjamin Sayyed asked a very case-specific question, but I think it can be replicated to a larger audience. So he says that, hi, my undergrad degree was in journalism and media. Now I am admitted for masters in information system. I would like to know if my different educational background affects my visa chances.
This is also one of those non-traditional student profiles where you're changing fields, right?
Yeah.
So if I see on an application someone studied journalism, now they want to study computer science, what's the question in my head? Why? Right?
Yep.
So you know they're going to be thinking this question. Don't wait for them to ask it. Answer it for them preemptively. Tell them, I'm going to XYZ State University. I'm going to study a master's in computer science. My undergrad was in journalism, but I'm making this change because
Yep.
jobs pay more. I'm assuming that's a good reason and probably your reason.
Right. So there's a participant who says that I'm having a stammering problem. Can I mention it before my interview?
Yes, you can, when they say the first thing that they say to you, which might be something like, "What's your purpose of travel? Where are you going to study in the U.S.?" I would say, depending on the severity of your stammering issue, you could say the first thing. Excuse me, I stammer, but I'll try to speak clearly, and then tell you your answer. Or the first time that you do stammer, just say, "Oh, excuse me, I have a stammer." But they don't refuse you for having a stammer. They will
Yep.
refuse you for failing to communicate, but they won't
Yeah.
refuse you because you communicate with a stammer.
Cool. I think that clears things out. So Karan has a question. I won a H1B lottery last year, but did not apply for stamping. I am heading to Chicago Booth School of Business and wanted to check if having an H1B visa earlier, but no stamping, would this raise any concern?
No, that will not raise any concern. And if it was even noticed, if I don't think they'll even have that information, because you never applied for the visa. So
Yeah.
if they do somehow know this, they'll consider it positive information.
Okay. Cool.
Mhm. And
Uh,
also, you're going to University of Chicago Booth School. I don't think that you should have an issue if you've never committed a immigration infraction. You should not have an issue.
Correct. Correct. Uh, we have another question from Sarupa. I'm sorry, there are a lot of questions flowing in. Um, Sarupa asks that, do we need savings for visa acceptance? Is education loan not enough?
You need to show how you're going to fund your studies, and you need to show as much funding as you can, and not just funding. You need to show as much financial stability. What they are looking for is evidence that you're going to return to your home country after you do your studies. Evidence that you can pay for your studies, and evidence that you will go back to your home country. If you don't present any evidence to them, they're going to think, okay, well, why would you come back if you have no prospects for having a good living when you come back? So they think, well, might be encouraged to stay in the U.S., and that's when they refuse visas. That's the number one. That's the the reason why they refuse student visas. So if you have a loan, yes, you talk about the loan. But if your family also is middle class and has some means, has some property maybe, but you just don't want to sell the property to pay for the education, still talk about that as well, so that they know that you've got um, a comfortable lifestyle to return to.
Yeah, right. Benjamin, there is a question which is in line with the stream change, but slightly different. So Ayman says that I've graduated from mechanical engineering and want to pursue data science engineering, but I have a 2 years work experience in data science. Will that help?
Yeah, that change is not that big. The visa officers are. I'm an engineer. The other visa officers are not engineers. Very, very few of them. When they see data science engineering and mechanical engineering, they're going to consider that that's all the same field. So that might be a surprise, but they're not considering that a big change.
Okay. Uh, Aman has a question. Should we mention family business as an important connection that will motivate me to come back to my home country?
If you've got a family business that is a relevant motivation to come back, then yes, you should mention it. Absolutely.
Okay. I have a very straightforward question from Sagar, and he says, I was rejected 2 times at Chennai. The visa officer did not ask me any question. They asked which university and when did you graduate. That's the question they asked, even they did not see my face also. So that's
Hmm.
what he has written.
Okay. Well, I can tell. I know you're this person who submitted the question. And I want you to take this as constructive. You're not thinking about it correctly, right? You're thinking, oh, he didn't even look at me, and he just asked these questions. But you didn't say in any of that what you did, right? You didn't tell me anything about what your answers were to those questions,
Yeah.
because his questions don't determine what his decision is. It's your answers that determine what the decision is. So you're thinking, okay, he only asked me these questions. Well, that that really doesn't have much relevance. I need to know what are the answers that the visa officer heard. It's what the visa officer hears that affects their thinking. And so, what's the university, right? So that could have an effect. The better the university, and the better the university's reputation, the higher the chances of issuance. So that's going to have an effect there as well. So there was the university, and what was the second one? The second question there, I can't remember the second question, but no matter the question, it's the answers that you give, and you don't have to just answer the question directly with only that brief piece of information that they've asked for, right? If they ask me what university I'm attending, and I know that my university is not a top tier university, let's say it's a middle tier university. Let's say it's going to be something like Southeast Missouri State University. Okay.
Yep.
But I know that I have strong finances. I got my family owns a business, right? When they say, okay, so what are you going to study in the U.S.? I would say, well, I'm going to study a master's at Southeast Missouri, and I'll be able to pay for it with family funds because my family owns a plantation uh, growing millet of 70 acres and has 40 employees, and our family also owns 3 homes in the city. Something like this, right? That's how you would shift an answer, right? If the academics are not the strength, but your finances are, then you focus on the finances. If they're asking
Yeah.
about finances and that's not the strength, then you focus on the academics.
Yep. I think that answers a lot of questions. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
let's- there is another question from Kevin, which is in line with the appointment. He asked that how to expedite visa time as it is listed on the USA consulate website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's 2 ways to expedite a visa. One way is that you book a visa appointment for whatever time is available in the future, and then you submit a request to get an earlier appointment. When you submit that request, you have to keep in mind everyone is submitting that request, right? So everyone has done this, And so it's not actually that helpful. The way to do it is within 30 days of your program start date, submit the request. So it's June 23rd. So if you've got a program start date of July 20th now, you would submit that request and say, I have a program start date within 30 days. I need to have an earlier visa appointment. Here's my name and passport number. There's still a great chance that they're not going to approve it just because everyone is requesting an expedited appointment. So if everyone requests an expedite, well, then no one gets an expedite, right? Because they're not spending a lot of time judging who gets the expedite or not. It's pretty automatic. The other way that you can get an earlier appointment date is manually by logging in and just checking, refreshing the calendar and seeing if there's an earlier appointment that pops up on the screen. That takes a lot of time and it's not guaranteed. I know that there are some services out there. There are some agents that will accept that task and they'll try to grab you an earlier spot. Some people have had success with that.
Yeah. So there's another question, Gopi, and he's little demotivated and he asks, sir, I have got refused 2 times. I don't know why I'm getting it. Can I try again?
Yes, you can, but you've been refused twice, right? When you imagine what's happening from the visa officer's point of view, they will see you come up and they'll scan your passport. And if you're applying at the same post, let's say that you're applying in Bombay, they're going to scan your passport and immediately what they see is 2 refusals. If you change the location, they don't see that immediately, but they still see it very quickly. And when they see that 2 of their colleagues have already refused you, it's inevitable that they're going to have a negative impression. They're going to think, okay, my colleagues who have the same training as me have already decided that you don't meet the qualifications and they've refused your visa. So what you need to do is from the very beginning, reverse that and give them a positive impression. You need to have a strong strategy for how you're going to do that, right? If you just walk up passively and think, okay, I'll just try again, and by trying, you mean just walk up to the window and see what happens, the same thing is going to happen. They're not going to change their decision. But you have to walk up and they have to first see that you've gotten refused twice, but then hear something from you that is so impactful that it makes them question why their colleagues refused you, right? What you need them to think is, huh? Why did they get refused if you're telling me this, right? Something like if you say, hi, yeah, I'm applying for this and I've got a fully paid scholarship and I've applied twice before. I don't know why I was refused. Then the visa officer is going to think, full funded scholarship. I don't know why you would be refused either. And then they're going to think about your case rather than think, oh, automatically I'm just going to refuse you. So you've got to have something that's going to change their mind.
Yeah. There's a question from Deepthi, which is I think for the larger audience, it is applicable. Hey, I've shown my personal fund for my I-20. I'm sponsored by my parents and also have an education loan. Could you please share how to answer my funding question?
Sorry, tell me that one more time.
Yeah. So she says that I have shown personal funds for my I-20 and I'm sponsored by my parents and also I have an education loan. Could you please share how to answer my funding question?
Yes. You tell them about all of your funding, okay? When they ask about the funding and any question, I want everyone here on this call, all 33 people, to take this to heart. When they ask a question, you're not trying to think of one simple answer that's very formulaic and just personal funds, loan,
Yeah.
right? This is not the way to answer the questions. The visa officers want to have a conversation with you. They want to just engage with you and learn about you and feel confident, right? They want their job to be easy. And what makes their job easy? That they know immediately that they should issue the visa or refuse the visa. It's when they don't know what to do, that's when their job is difficult and they lean towards refusing. So what you want to do is give them all that information. So you told me that you had all these multiple sources of funding. That's great. When the visa officer asks you, how are you going to pay for your studies? Tell them about all of those sources of funding, starting with the most impressive, which is personal, right? If you do have personal funds, right? If your family owns a home, right? If your parents have stable jobs, government positions, whatever it may be, start with that, and then move down the list until you tell them all the sources of funding. So they think, oh, well, that's quite a really reliable financial background that you have to be able to pay for your education.
There's another question from Amanpreet, and he says that can I say to the visa officer that I found my university through an education consultant and explain the positive aspect of the university when he asks about why am I selecting the university?
Yes, you can and you should. Just yesterday, I was speaking to a student, and they were going to a community college in San Francisco. And when I asked them what they said in their visa interview when they were refused, they told me, they said, I chose this university because it is a top college in Silicon Valley and has excellent professors and the best teaching. That's not true, right? And it's not believable. And what kind of person can give that answer? Anyone, right? It's not a real answer. It's not a believable answer. That's not really how you found this university. That doesn't introduce me to you and your student journey at all. Now, once I started talking to him, it took me a while. It took me 5-10 minutes to get him to tell me the real reasons. And he said, what it was that he wanted to apply to computer science programs, and he looked up top computer science programs in the San Francisco and California area, and he applied to them, but he didn't get into them because his background was not in computer science. It was in the humanities. And so he needed to go to a community college first to get the background in computer science before he could then transfer into a more well-known university. That is a real story. And that makes me think this is a real student on a student's journey trying to find the way to get what they want from their education, right? That story can only be told to me by someone who's a real student, right? So that's when I trust that this is a real student, right? But something like this university has great academics and has a campus of 110 acres and an endowment of $4.3 billion and a student faculty ratio of 12 to 1. That tells me you went to the university's Wikipedia page, and anyone can do that.
Yeah, that is right. Sagnik has a question that how much should I show as my finances? Is it I-20 multiplied by 2?
It is, the answer to that question is as much as possible. Okay. So, and just think about it, right? If you go to a job interview and the job has a requirement of a bachelor's degree and you have a PhD, when they ask you, what's your level of education? Would you say, I have a bachelor's degree because that's the requirement for the job? Or would you say, I have a PhD because it's the highest qualification you can show? I hope everyone recognizes that you would say, I have the PhD because it's the best qualification you can show. For finances, it's the same thing. Why would you show less finances just because it satisfies the requirement? No, you show more. You show as much as possible. That's always the answer, is show as much as possible. For your academics, for your finances, always show the greatest qualifications you can.
Cool. Similar lines, Vikas has a question, how do we answer when we only have admit from one university?
How do you answer what, right? If they ask you the question, have you applied to other universities? That's the only time that would come up, right? So if you aren't asked that question, you don't have to address that. But if they do ask you, have you applied to any other universities? It's not wrong to only apply to one university. They ask that question for the same reason they ask, why did you choose this university? It's trying to hear if you're a real person, if you're a real student, if you're a real student who really is on a student's path. So here's a real answer for having chosen multiple universities, right? So did you apply to any other universities? Yes, I did. I applied to these 4 universities because they were the universities that were offering a computer science degree that were pretty highly ranked, but I know I wasn't going to get into the top school. So I applied to these ones, which are good, mid-tier schools, and I was accepted to 2 of them. And then this is the school that had gave me a lower tuition rate, so I chose this school. That's a good answer because it shows that you went through a process that a student goes through. Now, here's a good answer for if you have not applied to multiple schools, right? So, have you applied to more than one school? No, this was the school that I identified. I reached out to them. I talked to them about the program. I thought I had a pretty good chance of getting in. So I applied and I was accepted. So I didn't need to apply to any other schools.
Yeah.
It's an equally good answer. Here's a bad answer. Did you apply to any other schools? No. That's
Yeah.
bad. That's a bad answer. Right? You've not given them anything to make them believe that you're a real student.
Yeah, I think that answers one more question that Jeffrey had asked, a very specific question that I applied to only one university, and did receive an admit. But will the fact that I applied to just one university create a negative impact on my interview? I think I just answered that very question.
Yeah, it doesn't. It does not unless you make it a negative, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's another question from Steve, and he asked that how should we answer when asked about our GRE score if we didn't write it, but my university is in top 20 universities in the US.
Okay, this is one of those questions too where you've asked the question, how do I answer about my GRE if I didn't take it? Okay, well, why didn't you take it, right? Did the school not require it? Did the school require a GMAT instead? Does the school have a comprehensive application process where you don't take that test, right? You know the answers to this question, not me. Oh, and not the visa officer. So if the visa officer thinks, okay, graduate students that are not studying business take the GRE, I'll ask, what was your GRE score? Well, only you know why you won't have a GRE score, and only you know the reasons why that's legitimate, right? So I'm just going to make up a reason. This is not what you should say because I don't know your reasons, but here's a plausible answer. So what was your GRE score? I didn't have to take the GRE for this program. They have a holistic admissions process where they look at your university scores, professional track record, references, and things like that. So I actually didn't have to take the GRE, but in my undergrad, I had top marks, and also in my bachelor's degree, I had top marks. So if I had to take it, I hope I would do well, but it wasn't needed for this degree. Right? I don't know if that's true in your case, right? But there's some type of answer that makes sense if you didn't take a GRE.
Correct. So, on a different line, Varun has a question. Again, a very specific question. I have a personal loan on me now, but I have secured a loan of 60,000 USD and savings from my mom of 20 lakhs too, which covers all my expenses and whatever is required for the course of my masters. Does it slim the my chances of visa, as in having a loan on top of a education loan, pre-loan?
No, the embassy and consulates do not know that you have a personal loan.
Yeah. Cool. There's another question from Vijit, and he says that my visa got rejected. I don't know. They didn't ask me many questions. Last question asked was about my sponsor, who is my mom and is a single parent. They immediately rejected.
Okay, this is one where many people think that whatever the final question is,
Yeah.
that is the question that led to their refusal. That's not accurate, right? People think that it's okay. You start up here and you're going, okay, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, and then I answer a question wrong and then I'm refused, right? But that's not how it works. You actually don't start here. You start here. The assumption is that every visa applicant is unqualified. Now, this might be a surprise, but the assumption in the law is that the visa officers assume all visa applicants are unqualified until the visa applicants prove that they are qualified. So instead of starting here, and if you mess up, you'll get refused. You actually start from zero, and you have to do things right in order to get issued. You have to convince them that you do have the qualifications. So whatever that final question was, that's not a reliable indicator of what the reason was that you got refused.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Kirandeep has a very specific question, and she asks that what is an apt reply for the question like, if you have enough or more funds than the basic fee, why have you taken a loan?
Again, this is the kind of question where only you know the answer, right? I don't know why you've taken a loan if you have enough funds personally, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know. I don't know. So you can think about that, or you can come to us and tell me the reason, and I'll help you form that into an answer that is the best way to convey that information to the visa officer. But you know the reason why that is, right? There's no many times, and there's a lot of questions that come in from students that make me realize that the students think that there's a correct answer for any question. There is not one correct answer that you need to give. There's only your answers, because it's not about answering questions correctly on an exam. This is not an exam where there are correct answers and incorrect answers. Let me tell Janik Patel, we're not going to answer your question just because you're spamming us. It's not correct answers and incorrect answers. Okay, it is a conversation where you're trying to convince them to believe in you as a person, to believe in your intent, right? So it's not about correct and incorrect answers. It's about, can you make them trust you? That's what it's about.
Yeah. Right. Uh, there's another interesting question from Mino, and she asks that does the visa officer or the visa officer can see your previous DS 160 for which the visa got rejected, and now when the student reapply with the new DS 160, then will the visa officer compare the old and the new DS 160?
Yes, they many times will do this. It's very easy for them to compare your old application to your new application. You've submitted them both to the same organization, right? They have computer systems just like any other. If you've submitted one job application to a company and you submit another job application to the same company, you should assume that they're going to look at both of them, that they can compare both of them. So yes, in most cases, you don't want to change the way that you fill out that application. Now, some people come to me and they've made bad mistakes filling out their first application because they think they interpreted it more like a resume, but it's not a resume. It needs to be the chronological full record of your education and your work, right? And they've left off some things because they thought, oh, I didn't think that was relevant, so I left that off. But then it looks like you're hiding things, right? So we'll make those changes if need be, and then we'll make some other improvements to it in certain areas. If you've been refused before, well, there's an opportunity to talk about why you think you were refused, and that's a written message basically that you're giving the visa officer. There's no other way to give them a short written message other than filling in a box right there. There's no they don't give you a field where it says, here, please write whatever you would like me to know. There's no field like that, so you have to find opportunities to do that.
Yeah. Right. Right. Uh, there's a question from Sijin, and very interesting one. And he says that he has booked his visa slot using his friend's I-20 by mistake and paid service fee his own for his own service ID, and also submitted the same ID in the DS-160. Does that make any problem in biometrics or the interview?
Yeah, that makes a big problem. I don't know how you could have done that. It's a big problem. You need to fix that. I don't know how you should fix that. But you need to make sure that they do not interpret this as fraud, because it sounds pretty sketchy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, there's another question from Ayman, and he asks that what is the visa success rate for someone who has enrolled into a master's course that offers 1 year distance learning in India and another year in on campus in the USA? Is there any
Oh, okay.
difference
Well,
between the two, the approval rate?
well, they don't publish any type of any type of exact numbers for master's approval and refusal rates. They just have F1 visa approval and refusal statistics. So I just know from experience, and I think most people do, that the master's students get issued at a higher rate. Now, this program where it's a 1+3 program where you're studying 1 year in India remotely and 3 years in the US, how would I interpret it as a visa officer? Well, it depends. If someone walks up to the window and doesn't tell me anything about it, they just submit the I-20 and stand there and wait for me to ask questions, I'm never going to know that it's a 1+3 program. I'm just going to say, what are you going to study in the US? How are you going to pay for it? Right? What are you going to do when you get back? And so I'm never going to know if you just give me short answers. So it would actually be beneficial to talk about that. If I say, what are you going to study in the US? And you say, well, I've already started a program at University of Minnesota. It's a program where I study 1 year remotely and then 3 years in person. So I've already completed the first semester, the first 2 semesters. I've got my transcripts here. I've had good marks, and now I'm going to do the 3 years in person in the US, right? Because then you're showing, oh, I've already committed a year to doing the thing that I say I'm going to do. So you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. There's a question. I don't know why this question came up so late in this. So, if a student has maternal uncle in the US, will that have negative impact on my visa acceptance?
You said if a student has an uncle in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If a student has an uncle or family members in the US, yes, that is something that the visa officers will consider. It could be positive, it could be negative. If it's negative, there's ways to try to explain it. Let's talk about a positive example. If you have a relative that's in the U.S. who went to the U.S. and studied at University of Texas, Austin, and now is working for a tech company as a computer science as a developer in San Francisco on an H-1B visa, that's a positive, right? That shows I've got family that goes to the US, completes their studies, and then is on a correct and proper visa route, right? That's a positive. And they'll think, okay, well, then you might behave the same way. You're part of the same family, same background. If you have a family member in the US, however, who went to the US as a student and then dropped out of school and then is out of status and hasn't left, then that's a hard negative. But if you just say that, well, you're not really trying to turn the negative around. You need to show why you're different, right? You can't lie about these things because they can find all this information. So you need to be able to say, yes, this is the situation with this cousin of mine, but, and then whatever the reasons are, but I only know that because that's what my mom told me. I've only met this cousin a couple times, and we're not close, and I don't have a relationship with them. Or it's yes, it's my uncle, and he did this, but he did this like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and I understand that that might not be a great path, but that's not what I'm planning to do at all. My situation's completely different.
Okay.
If you just leave it out there, yes, my uncle went as a tourist and then stayed forever, then it's not going to go well.
Yeah. So Ben, I think 3 to 4 minutes to go. I will take just last 2 questions before we close.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question from Sandeep, and he asks, "How can I convince the counselor officer now that my intention is not to work in the US after 2 refusals?" And he says that in the first time he nodded in agreement when asked about working in the US.
He nodded in agreement when asked about working, as if. Well, this is hard one to interpret. Do you mean working in the U.S. after your studies? Do you mean working in the U.S. previously and nodding in agreement? You know, those little types of things. Like if you mean like, oh, you gave like a subtle nod while the visa officer was asking, I don't think that that's necessarily the thing that would cause you to get your visa refused.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as everything, right? I don't think that in your case, from the information you've shared, that it's a subtle thing that's going on. I imagine that it's just the standard refusal where they just don't trust you're going to go and do the studies and come back. They don't trust your intent. And so it's still just the, that main top level strategy of making sure they know what your credentials are, what your plans are, what your process was to come to this decision.
Yeah. Let's take the last question, and it's from Sasha. So she says that both my parents are working, but we have enough savings to fund our education. Now, should we go for a loan, or is it enough to crack the visa interview without with just showing the savings?
Well, you can do whatever is in the best financial interest for your family, right? Whichever you choose to do, right? So I know some students have told me, my family has plenty of funds, but we've got it invested in real estate and businesses, and we just don't want to sell those right now. So we've taken a loan instead of selling the investments, right? Instead of selling the gold or the land. Uh,
Mhm.
that's fine, right? Um, but you have to tell the visa officer what's going on and why you're doing it, right?
Sure. Sure, Ben. Thanks for answering that. I think that was the last question that we have taken. Guys, I know there are a lot more questions on the YouTube channel as well that we didn't answer. But I have sent in the link in the chat box, and you guys can uh, make use of the link and get in touch with Ben and the team, as he mentioned in the start of the session. Feel free to do that. Anything else before we close the session, Ben, from your side?
No, that's great. I mean, if you've shared the link with everybody, that's exactly how you get in touch with us for a consultation. Um, there's also a, a free tool that I'm going to send you a link to. This is a tool that's on our website. Um, so actually, I'll just tell you, when you go to our website through the link that Harsh has shared with you, navigate to the visa checkup, right? I want to make sure that you get there through GyanDhan's link. So I didn't give you the full URL. So click on the URL that GyanDhan, that's linked to GyanDhan. And then when you get there, you're going to see up in the top bar, visa checkup. This is a tool that's it's a free tool. It's a quick bot flow that's powered by the information that I and all the other former visa officers have put into it about how we analyze um, visa applicants' cases. And you'll get a quick and rough estimate of what your visa chances are from 0 to 100. It's based on country of origin, finances, the school you're applying for, the major that you have, what's your funding. It's based on all of these. It can't take into account your personal situation and the small details, but the broad strokes it does. And so you can use that, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you as well. But definitely click on that link and check out our website, and hopefully we'll be able to help you.
That should definitely help. That is a great tool, Ben. Obviously, guys, please make use of that tool. Feel free to use it as many times as you want, and yeah, that should definitely help. Thank you, Benjamin, for the awesome session. And I know there were a lot of questions, and you had a lot of patience to answer each one of them carefully. And guys, I have again pasted the link in the chat box. And please feel free to browse through it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Ben.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.